realized that she's not only the president of the Ludhiana Management Association, but she's a person who's gone from Harvard to running the PCTE group of institutions. She's traveled to over 40 countries. She's delved a lot into different types of spirituality. And I thought it would be a great day for us to have this conversation. It is International Women's Day, of course, and this year the United Nations has spoken about investing in women, right? So I think this is a good person to have a conversation with. Harpreet, let's talk about investing in women, the art of mindful leadership, I guess investing in yourself. So thank you for being here.
Such an
And tell us a little bit about this journey of yours that led to this book, please.
Bindu, thank you for having me and such a lovely introduction. The book is an accident. I'll start with that. It wasn't meant to be an author at all. And this was the COVID, and we all were doing silly things around COVID. As you mentioned, we're running this PCT group of institutes, which is 5 different colleges, and we have about 50 countries on the campus. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because when COVID happened, a lot of these kids, students, they were kind of stuck right there in the boarding houses, guest houses, yada, yada. And initially it used to be one of my young friends, she's joined me here. She was at the front desk in the public relations, and she would write to me and say, one of the students is down or low, and could you talk to so-and-so? And there were a few conversations, 2 or 3 of them, and then it got to a point where one of our Indian students committed suicide and probably stuck in the gear. And, this because, obviously we all went through a lot. And our international students were even more trapped. So I decided to write a note and sort of an article and send it out. So I kind of made this a regular feature. And if you notice the book, it's like literally a dialogue. It's literally not a book. It's like I wanted to talk out to them, and that's how it was written. And then, of course, my eldest son, who was doing his undergrad at Oregon, he was also stuck. So this was about 75 pages, and I sent it out to him, and I said, look, maybe it's helping my students, maybe it could help you. And he goes, why only to your students? There are a lot of people here I'm talking to, and people who want to talk to people and understand something. And I sat down by the night, and I'm like, okay, here are a couple of people saying manuscripts and invited. So I sent it out, and that's the end of it. About barely 10 days or a fortnight down, and I hear from this Italian group which functions out of the UK, and they say, we want to publish this. This is exactly what we need in COVID. And I was like, that's it. I don't intend to write another one, or never wrote another one before that. That was an accident.
Very exciting. So tell me a little bit about your journey and how you see mindfulness as relevant to leadership. I'd like to tell our distinguished audience that's here as well that Harpreet has been kind enough to agree to take questions. So if there are any questions that you have, you can just drop them into the chat, and she and I are both monitoring it, and we can kind of make this a conversation, not just the both of us, but with everyone here as well. So how do you think mindfulness plays a part in leadership, and how has it played a part in your leadership journey?
Okay. Drastically, I would say. I personally feel, Bindu, that we all come with this. Years back, I was reading this book, part of the spiritual readings by Rusbeh Barucha. The book is called Fakir, the first of the books I think he wrote. And he talks about how we all come with one burden, at least in each life. Since we are Indians, we believe in reincarnation. And he says in each life, you come with at least one burden. And, one of the purposes is to overcome it. And I knew as a very small child that one of my burdens was anger. Normally we say we get to be 3 or 4 before you remember, something about consciousness and awareness. But very early on, I remember saying, oh my God, I would probably the angriest person around. I don't remember anyone so hot-headed. And I used to struggle a lot with it. So I've seen people around now in campus, youngsters who are either blessed with stress or anxiety, or they go low, or they have, we all have our own shit, to get it together. And mine was anger. And it was very disgraceful. I used to struggle with it all the time. I would do things and then I would regret them. You can imagine, you'd end up being flared up about something. And then later on, you'd be like, shit, what did I do? Did I go too far? So as a leader, when you're running several departments and you're dealing with a couple of hundred people constantly, there are people who are not doing their job and you want to counsel them or talk to them. I would feel horrified about 15 years back, let's say, when I would go overboard, and there was no going back. The words are out and there's no way you can get it back now. So it got to a point where I was like, sit down, reflect every time and say, how can I do this better? And I want to say this disclaimer right here, right now. People, I justified myself for years before I got to this, where I would say, oh, but the person screwed up. Oh, that was so devastating what he or she did. There was this typical example about a lady who was involved in geopolitical conversations as an international business teacher. And I find out in one of the faculty development programs that she doesn't know where London is on the map. And I cannot tell you, I stood in that hall in midst of people and I yelled to a point where I noticed my body is trembling. And that day I was like, obviously it's consuming me, whatever that is, it's stress or anxiety or whatever that is for somebody, it's consuming you. You have no control over yourself. So if I can't do this, how can I manage anything else? And that's where mindfulness and my further research into different scriptures, understanding, breath work, and getting a hold of myself, that triggered it off. May I say that? Yeah. Does that help? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. In the beginning of the book, you talk about either you will remain, or at the back of the book, actually, you say either you will remain possessed by your mind or you'll learn to govern it, right? And I guess that's the journey that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the book, you talk about this idea of a quest and pausing and stepping back. So for the benefit of our audience, how do you see that as something that can play out in an everyday journey? Like our audience today is, largely people from the All India Management Association, the Young Leaders Council. So people who are interested in leadership, people who are leaders at different stages of life. So how is this quest something that could apply to everybody?
Yeah. I think somewhere when the ego develops, whenever it is, our consciousness and identity, when we learn to revolt against things and say, it's me, my brains, my ideas. Along with it comes this understanding of saying, I want to be different. I'm not like everybody else. I want to stand out. I don't know how it happens down in South, Bindu, but in Punjab, it's very loud. Egos are loud. Let me put it that way. People want to have big cars. They want to dress up in all the brands in the world. They just want to stand out for whatever reasons. And that's their identity. So, and I believe as we go to that Maslow's hierarchy, it's just different things. For some, it's intellectual stuff. For others, it's like, physical, materialistic stuff. So when you go on to look at COVID, for example, that's the time and era when I was penning this down. You're basically saying, you went to the gym and you worked out for years and you had this huge hulk of a body, and then one virus came and took you off the planet, It's that something so trivial and invisible and yet so big. And then it shakes you up and say, how many cars do you need in the house? And how many clothes do you need? How many shoes do you need? How much do we need to really hoard here before we go on to talk about real things? You get me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that COVID was an unnatural, but in some sense natural pause for many of us, where for the first time we were forced to confront that you can't keep doing what you're doing every day and hoping that things will fall. So when you're forced to take that break, I think, like you said, a lot of people developed anxiety, depression, confusion, helplessness, but it was also an opportunity for many to stop and reflect. So how would you, oh, we do have a question in the chat. What are the different means and ways to use mindfulness at work, from Dr. Ajit Kar?
Uh, so in fact, the book talks about quite a few things, and one of them is in relation to what Bindu just spoke about, Doctor, which is sort of, stepping back. I feel we get over-involved. We really engage too much in whatever we get involved in. Let's say you're doing a project or a mission, or you're involved with an association or a club, and then you get so much into it, it becomes your identity, a part of you, So one thing that I really talk about in the book is stepping back, when you could learn to literally, mentally step back from things and be able to look at them more holistically, or, the way an outsider would look at it. Be a stranger to yourself and your reactions and your emotions and get a hang of it. There could be so many things. I think we also forget to breathe. That's another chapter literally in the book. When I talk about, how the first thing that you do when you're born is the breath, and the last thing that you do is also take a breath. May I go on to say that people think that you are associated with everything through your mind, but I personally have experimented that it's the breath that connects you with everything. If you are, I don't know how many of you can do it now, but please do it after the talk if you don't feel comfortable. If you were to actually switch off your breath for a couple of minutes or few seconds, you would notice that all the time that you don't breathe, you don't have any of the anxiety, any of the stress. Go into the water in the swimming pool, how it feels, The minute you disconnect with air, that's the source to Maya, as we call it. It brings the fives to you, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, whichever way you like to put it. And it's absolute source that gets you. So we forget to breathe. On stressful, long days, I've noticed in the past, I would rush through the day, and everything, when it's done, then you sit down on the chair and you take the sigh. The sigh is literally when you remember
To breathe.
But if we were breathing properly through that day, with so much more oxygen logically going to your head, you would be able to learn to step back. You would be able to take better decisions, more informed decisions. You'd be able to do better for yourself and for others,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research out there supporting breathing, right? I mean, and I'm going to say mindful breathing, but even when you have anxiety, they talk about box breathing, right? How do you do 4 counts in and hold, and then 4 counts out and hold again? So I guess all of this sort of ritualistic breathing, if I may, kind of forces you to anchor yourself back to something that is real, right? So I can control my breath. Let me control that. Let me connect with that, and then let me see what I can control or not control in my external circumstance in order to settle and influence things. We have another question asking about Maslow's hierarchy and how you see that fits in. How does mindfulness overlap with hierarchy? But having read your book, I see you also talk about ego and Maslow's hierarchy. How does that work?
Yeah. Essentially, what I'm saying is, when you look at the lowest one, the lowest model, where Roti Kapda Makan comes in, and that's where the ego is playing a big role, And then as you go up to self-actualization, where you're talking about intellect and everything. So spirituality or mindfulness is not very different either, because you would notice that your, how do you say, priorities sort of differ in a very similar way as you climb the ladder or as you go up the Maslow's. That's the analogy. I'm sorry, is there more to it that I'm...
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that, because I think that people put this hierarchy of needs up as this is the be all and end all, and it is our journey to kind of make it from here to there. But I found that your perspective was a little different, and that's also how our ego is tracing it, right? Where we want more, and we sort of look for more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a routine that you follow, like to anchor yourself? I feel like you have this very busy life, obviously running a number of institutions and doing the things that you do. So what I've always enjoyed hearing from very successful people, and I'm sure the audience does as well, is what are those little routines or rituals that you use to anchor yourself to get through these days in a mindful way?
Yeah. It wasn't like that at the beginning. I would literally put sometimes a snooze every 2 hours, even if I was in the meeting, and the snoozes would read something like "come back," like "come back to your body," wherever you are. They were like messages to say, right, stay right here, right now, like all kinds of auto suggestive messages for me all those years back when I could not stay in the body. I mean, I literally say stay in the body because the minute your mind goes out, you're not living in the present. And I personally believe, and I'm sure there's enough written about this as well, that when you're living in the past, you're worrying about something that did not go well. If you were to close your eyes now and think about all the years that you've led, all the great times, lovely, happy, blissful times that have been there, you probably wouldn't remember a day, except maybe when you had a child or the day of your marriage or something. And if you look at all the bad days, the horrid days, when something went drastically wrong, it stands out for you immediately, right? So tying that back to the conversation, it's about how you relate to things. If you stay in your body in the present and not live through the past, because let's be honest, we plan our days. I mean, we've all got these planners and PDAs and PAs and everything that helps us, and that nothing goes right. I don't know, I'm 50 already, and every single day that I have planned, I'm sure everybody in the room gets it, that there's never been a day in your life when everything has exactly happened the way you wanted to plan out. So when we learn, and I'm sure everybody is a learner, that's why we're here, when we learn that it doesn't work out the way we meticulously plan out, then we got to be more spontaneous. We got to live in the present. We got to understand that the future hasn't happened. The past's already done. You can't change it. And this thing, the present, it is so finesse, so minute. It's like just this fraction of a second that passes by. And I feel like most of us worry about future or past and let it go. And therefore, the second you are in the present, you're never worried. You never have anxiety. You never have stress. It's only when you are in the future or the past, when your mind runs to one of those two, that's when we fear it. Therefore, lots of snoozes, Bindu, and lots of support group in Hinduism and Sikhism and multiple Hindu religions. We call it Sangat. And since Sangat is very difficult to come by, so therefore, lots of people here who talk about the things that I want to hear. It could be Muji to Rupert Spera, people who are talking my gang, my tribe, and initially subscribing to them, making sure that I find time to listen to them every day before I could, until I began to read the Upanishads. So that was life-changing, I should say, in many ways. But I'm sure every one of us who's here, who's reflecting, meditating, it takes years before we slowly alter. I don't know that one day is 1 minute's enlightenment. I only understand that over a period of time, slowly the blinds get removed and our ignorance, is taken off. And slowly we kind of move to that truth, as we call it.
And sometimes it's also about that consistency of the experience, right? It's every day where you're kind of searching a little further. It's not like you said, one day I'm going to sit in it for 100 minutes and I'm going to have all of that. But it's really just every day are you unlocking a little bit more. I mean, I personally in the morning I need to walk and listen to podcasts, and it is that, right? That diversity of thought and experience that kind of sets you up for the day. It reminds you to breathe, because if you're walking fast, you really need to breathe, otherwise you're going to fall down, or any kind of exercise, or things where you're kind of waking up your body and your mind at the same time. And I think that if you're able to work little things like that into the start of your day, then you're prepared for everything not going the way that it was planned to be, right? So
There you
you're
go.
kind of starting at a calmer beginning. We have a question here from Ume, and she says, how do you develop emotional and intelligence, and how do you build this authentic calm and come out from anxiety?
May I respond to it by saying that when you understand that everyone is one, and your EQ kind of works it out by itself, because you empathize, even when other people are troubling you, or they're just horrid, possibly having a bad day, but you can see it. I mean, there's so much empathy that comes for you. When realization settles in that, I feel like this is the biggest challenge I have felt in the initial years, when, as a parent, I could see that I care for my children because they came through me, but I couldn't relate to the fact that others are also me and I am them, or we are all one. Despite the fact that every religion that I opened a book for scriptures started with, Om and Ek Oamkar, and everyone is one, or everything is one. But despite that, I feel that we couldn't believe it. We can't sort of agree with it. So just because the child comes through you, you feel you can care for it.
Right.
But if there's something else, it's difficult to relate to it. So I think Vedas have dealt with this beautifully. For example, in Ashtabakra Gita, one of the Upanishads, the example that they've given is about these water bodies and how you are a reflection of the truth, or the one creator. So the example is that if you put away lots of buckets of water, for example, that's my version of it, they would all reflect the sun outside right now, right? And if you leave them where there for a while, they will, every single bucket will have the reflection image of the sun, but the water will get warm. And that energy, which gives it warmth, is there till it's reflecting through it. When the sun sets, the warmth finishes. And, the buckets could be anything. They could be red, blue, big, small, ugly, shining, bright. Or, let me put it this way, it could be the ocean, still the same sun. It could be a muddled pot of water from the rain yesterday here, still the same sun. So it's reflecting through everybody, but it's difficult for us to understand that. And until we seep that in, and that's why I say it takes years probably for us to slowly let that sink in. Till then, it's difficult to really truly develop empathy, according to me. I mean, EQ is a nice scientific word that the modern world has given us, and we talk about it all the time, but it doesn't really truly come to us. Because sometimes I feel and I've been there personally, where I'm being very polite to people, and then I turn around and say, what the fuck? So, but that's it. It gets to that. So it doesn't truly come to you, because pretending politically, having political intelligence or social intelligence or cultural intelligence, you say all of them require a certain amount of EQ to be there. But at the end of the day, it's not truly it till you get there, right? So I don't think I'm totally there, but I see the difference between me then and now, and I empathize with the change, may I say. It's not easy for me either.
Yeah. I think there's this whole this body of work around how we are inherently tribal creatures, right? You're talking about how you relate to your children because they are of you, but this concept of what is my tribe is different in individualist and collectivist societies. So in some very individualistic my tribe is just me. The only person that I care about is me. Or it
Yes.
can be it's me and my children, my spouse, my parents, that is me. Or and this is the circle with which I care about. And then there are these larger communities where the entire tribe, right? If somebody else is in some rural tribes of Papua New Guinea, for example, apparently it's believed that anybody's child of the tribe is equivalent to your child.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
I think also one thing that we have to keep in mind is how our societies are structured in a way where our empathy sometimes dries up if we're looking at more individualistic cultures. And in situations where there's more of this feeling of we need to be together, we need to help each other, we're naturally sort of building some amount of empathy to others as well.
I'm
We have
reminded.
a question from Ananya Saxena, and she says, are there any ways to prevent ourselves from being triggered easily? I think the example that you gave in the beginning probably could have been a trigger for her question on triggering. I feel that sometimes things aren't entirely related to me, but can be quite triggering. And as a 20-year-old, this is something that I really want to work on before entering the corporate world. So how do you be less reactive and less triggered by your environment?
Yeah, Ananya, I've so been there, darling. I really want to thank you for that question. Empathize a lot with it. I was telling Bindu a few minutes back that I would just fly off the handle, literally. I would go into a rage. And I thought it was such a sham later on because trying to portray to the world that, I mean, this is one layer to it, that I have very high standards on everything, whether it's geopolitical knowledge that I was talking about, or morals, or this or that, and you're trying to put yourself up there by yelling at others. But the other bit is that regardless, because I can't remember when I started getting angry, and honestly, a large part of my growing up years, I remember being very angry. And one of the things that beckons to me is that through the Vedas that I began to understand is that whenever one of these emotions visit you, whatever it is, we just talked about anxiety, stress, and now we're talking about anger, and so whenever they visit you, and I literally say visit you because people say I'm angry, you are not angry. You've got a mind and body that you use to take this journey, and when you begin to empathize and understand that bit, you understand that the reason why I say visit you is because it comes for a while and then it leaves. It never stays. Think about any emotion that you've ever had. It's never stayed. No amount of love, no amount of anxiety, no amount of nothing has ever stayed with you. So it's always a visitor. And instead of running from it, let's say I've talked to people, students who've suffered from grief, for example. And one of the things I've noticed people do with stress or grief or any of those is try to run away from it. How about switching on a movie? How about going out with friends? How about doing whatever, but not think about it? Like for a few days, just I've been dumped by my girlfriend or boyfriend. Now let me spend next few days just staring away from everything that reminds me about her. And that alone would sort it out. I would personally advise you just the opposite. I'd say be brave, bring it up face to face, let's say anger, and see what it's really capable of. It doesn't last long. I tried that initially with my anger. That's how I ran through it. It's a bubble, it just bursts. And the best part is if you're in awareness, now anger visits you and you can see it. वो क्या कहते हैं, मक्खी देख के उगली नहीं जाती. पी नहीं सकते आप चाय, आपकी चाय में मक्खी आ जाए कैसे पी लेंगे आप? When you see a bad thing, you can't
Unsee it.
take it in, you can't consume it, So when you see it, you can't, that's going back to awareness. If you are in awareness, now let any of the emotions visit you, you understand what it is, There's this, another beautiful exercise that has helped me with any of these emotions is a why thing that we also do with our MBA students. When something comes up and I say, okay, why am I feeling this way? That's my ego troubling me. Like you get to that and then you say, oh, because he said this, and like, why does that bother me? Okay, because I was trying to get even here, or this was vendetta or whatever. Okay, why did I need to be that shallow? I'm like, why? Probably 15 whys before I get to the point where it shows me, and it's always ego, honestly, literally, just comes in different clothes, and you call it anger, you call it stress, you call it anything. Think of an emotion right now that freaks you out. And I'll derive it back to ego for you just now. Even when you're worried about your son being late, for example, and there's so much stress, here's a simple question. Does it bother you if your neighbor's son has not arrived? Because it's mine, me, mine, then it's worrisome. So ego is very tricky, I would say. It comes in different garbs, and it grabs you from different sides. If you can see it, it can't get the better of you. I would love it if you can stay vigilant.
So always look out for that ego, right? And see if you can confront the difficult. I think that was a really nice answer from Ananya. We've got another question from Mr. Gupta saying, can mindfulness improve emotional intelligence and mental health?
Certainly. That's all I'm talking about. In fact, I don't feel, I don't think there's something that can bring you down. Once you understand your truth, or you understand that, let me try to, if you were to begin to understand that there is more than just your brain here. I've put this down somewhere in the book, and I don't know, book was difficult to put down, honestly. It's philosophy, how do you explain it so much? But if you could begin to understand that, for example, one of the examples that I talk about is if you are reciting a poem or a prayer or something, and then the doorbells goes, and somebody in your family goes and opens the door and talks to the neighbor, and then you come back, the neighbor goes away, and now you come back, and you've heard the entire conversation, except you also been reciting the poem. There's so many similar examples. If you slowly bear it out, thread it out, you realize that it's not just your brain. There is something more to you. That heat that we just talked about in the bucket, like the essence of you. So science has developed, and I love science, but honestly, today, the best of the hospitals can replace everything for you. They can give you a new heart, a new liver, a new pancreas also now, by the way, and a new set of kidneys, everything, and they still can't bring you back to life. So we simply understand that there is something that's missing, no matter how well, and all these hundreds and thousands of years of our development or of our brain, the human race, and all of that put together, and the AI and ML, and we cannot put one human body. Do you see how the robots walk and the way they function? You can put them into a human-like clone body, but honestly, we can't bring one human back to life. It's as simple as that. So when we know that we are the consciousness, or whatever word you give to that, you understand that you're truth, or you're the energy, or you're the force, and you're not the mind and the body, and you use that to take this journey, to wear it like a costume, literally, to take this journey. When you understand that, I think then you understand that nothing, when you talked about mental wellness and emotional wellness, then you begin to understand that nothing can touch you or decrease you or increase you or tarnish you or malign you or do anything with you, honestly. I was talking about this recently with a young friend, and he was telling me that, people say things about you and they hurt you. And there are people you're close to and they say things about you and that really hurts you and brings you down. And I was trying to say that, look, when we give somebody else so much power, although they are a part of you, but you believe in their human version of understanding, materialistic understanding, and we give it so much power, you literally feel that every other person who can judge you is a god, is given a verdict on you. And whatever that verdict is, you lapping it up. And you, the one person who knows yourself the best, is not ready to believe in yourself. You give up on yourself when you allow that, those comments, that criticism, or whatever that negativity is to creep in. But all of that really dissipates when you begin to understand the truth. And the truth is that all they can comment on, all anybody can say about you, if you're unemployed, you're pathetic, I was an angry, bad person. And what they can comment about is the mind and body package that they can see, and vision with the eyes and the mind capacity only. The real you can never get tarnished, can never go up or down there. Thank you.
So you're saying that nobody can judge you, because what is you? What is I, right? And that's something that's pure and unvarnished. And we need to look at that when we're judging other people as well, and when we're getting angry, and when we're being intolerant, and when we're being unempathetic. It's the same principle.
Yes, yes, totally. With you.
Nancy, who I think is an alumni from Mozambique, from one of your colleges, saying, along with spiritual and intellectual growth, what major burdens of leadership have you managed to influence in your coworkers so that they could thrive as well?
What major, I'm sorry, do I need, I need to go.
Yeah.
What major,
Along with spiritual and intellectual growth, what other burdens of leadership have you managed? And how do you influence your coworkers so that everybody's thriving?
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for joining. I don't know, so nice. So I don't try to influence my coworkers. I don't know if that word is, in fact, I try not to even influence my own children. So I have a 22 and a 24-year-old. And the last week I was told that my elder one told me that you're not checking the younger one about something. Have you checked out on parenting? I quote him. He says, have you checked out on parenting? So I said, look, I can say something once, and you're all adults, and it's for you to see if you want to adopt it or not. And every one of my friends and my colleagues and my children and students, or whoever I am in life with, then it's okay, because you can make mistakes and I am a cushion to fall back on. I'll be here if you need me. That's all I can be. I don't think I can influence anyone more than that. It's everyone's journey to take, and should make mistakes. Nancy, we should make mistakes. It's got to be yin and yang, black and white and day and night. It's both got to be a part of it. It's important to learn through those difficult times. Otherwise.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, but I think another question to sort of distill out of it that I'd like to ask is, even if you're not influencing, how do you see that now that you've changed over this process of obviously years and decades, how does that inspire those around you to be more mindful, to be more empathetic? Because I guess if you're in a space where you are angry and you're reacting quickly as a leader, that's setting a tone, obviously. But if you are at this space where you are unconditional in your support, but you're still setting high standards, how does that then change the tone of your surroundings? And I think as leaders, whether we want to influence people or not, we have an ability to inspire. So how do you see that these changes in yourself sort of percolate outwards?
Of course, if you are in a leadership position and you behave better, I was not the first person to behave better. There were so many people around me, even in my team, I think, who were really graceful. I was the one for quite a while, especially as a grown-up adult, who was not being graceful. So I'm happy if that helped. But honestly, how do you say this? I think there are things that you get inspired from. For some of us, including me, I look at some things and I'm inspired by some great qualities. So it depends on what frame you are in and how much you're ready to absorb at that point of time. And then there are other things that you don't want to listen to. And I've also noticed how you go back to the same book or same movie or same person, and they're saying the same thing. And suddenly another day it clicks so well because you are in a frame to receive it. That's how I see life. I feel people are doing their learning in their own sweet time, and everyone should be allowed to. I don't think shaded plants grow very well. uh, we should let them have the sun and the storm and brace it all and sort of, yeah. Mhm.
So a lot of what you speak about and what you've written in the book as well is an exploration of spirituality in some sense, right? Not necessarily one religion, but many different religions and different spiritual practices that you reference throughout the book and also when you speak. So that's an interesting question again by Mr. Gupta is, does mindfulness require a belief in a religion or a spiritual practice or a God? Or can atheists also practice mindfulness like this?
Mr. Gupta, I think atheism is wonderful to start with. And I don't think you necessarily require any one religion, according to me. I've only read 3 or 4, but what I began to understand through it is that everyone is trying to climb the same mountain of nirvana, or being able to control your mind or live more stress-free and, be able to manage yourself more than anything else. And you can say that Guru Nanak or Jesus or, somebody goes up the mountain in a particular way, and then you try to follow that religion. But here's the thing, there's no way I can even if I'm born a Sikh, there's no way I can put my foot into the exact steps or footholds where he walked the mountain with. We're all having different experiences, and we all go through different journeys. And through that journey, the challenges and hardships that we face, we learn our own lessons, as we were just saying in the past conversation. So through them, our heart expands, our understanding, experiences, realizations come. And if those were not there, it would be silly to say that the religion alone by reading a book would perhaps help me or you to suddenly transcend everything. And that's part of the reason perhaps why we take the life, so that we have all kinds of good and bad experiences and we learn how to overcome them. Now, your question about religion, I don't think there's a bad religion out there. They're all inherently very good. But I feel that if you started being religious without ever questioning anything, my journey is about exploration and a lot of experimenting. And I've seen lots of people around me who are religious because their parents were religious and they were born to a particular religion and they were told that this is to be done. And then I see them faltering. And the reason I say that is because when things go bad, let's say they have God forbid, an accident in the house and somebody is terribly sick or hospitalized, and then their religion is like, oh, I used to go to the temple every day. How could God do this to me? And I talk about this in the book in a bit because I feel like we try to barter with God, or we try to barter with our higher self. It's like, oh, because in human beings, this works, you give me something good and I'll give you something good. I worship you, you be good to me. It's like this whole concept of I do something to you every day, so you take care of me. If you don't take care of me, then I lose faith in you. So I believe starting with atheism is a very good idea, or even more if you want to be agnostic, because then you question everything. And then you say, okay, what is, like I was just saying, with all that science, we haven't been able to put the body together. And now I respect that. There's something more. If I don't figure it out for myself, what's the point of just saying, I'm spiritual? I only need to submit and surrender to my higher self when my logic, my intellect, does it. If my intellect doesn't submit, then you go to the temple and matha take over. No? You put your forehead there, your intellect, your brilliance, your intelligence there, but you're actually not doing it. It's just symbolically. Every one of them does it. We do it in the temple. We do it with when you do the namaz, you bow down, you put your head there, or you take a bow either way. So you're trying to put your head down to something, basically, in all religions. But when we don't implement it, then what's the point of it? Because till your intellect actually submits, till the logic works out for you and says, yes, you know what? I agree with this. Until then, it's just theory for me. It's like somebody's written it, and I'm supposed to follow it because my parents asked me or my religion asked me, and I don't agree with it. That strife continues. So you got to see where you are and how you feel about it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. We have Sandesh here is us, and Sandesh is from Sushant University, and he says, if everyone was a leader instead of a follower, what would become of mankind? And why are most people desirous of becoming leaders, but then end up becoming followers?
I agree with you. Sushant, I agree with you. And I don't think anybody is in any respect, in all respects, I should say, a leader. Somebody could be a leader in, for example, me in education, but then a follower in spirituality, or you could be a leader in with students, but I could be a follower in the kitchen. I'm pathetic at it. So I need to go and learn. I follow somebody or the other with a YouTube, and then I go to the kitchen and I try to work out my experiments. We always I think for that matter, all leaders have to be learners first. So one of the chapters in the book is, the title says, I don't know. And I'm saying, if I don't first agree to the fact that I don't know, just like I said, being an agnostic, there's no way I can learn anything, because you're trying to, you know how we are with the kind of information right now that is going around us. You're so filled up that you got to really empty yourself, accept that I don't know, and only then I can learn something. So I don't think anybody can be a perfect, wholesome leader in every way. There's no perfection at all. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that is, how do you reconcile yourself from, I think, isn't that we're taught as kids that everybody should be a leader, right? Your aspiration is to be the boss. Your aspiration is, and how do you, when at some point you realize that you're not going to be a leader in every domain, right? I mean, many of us are fortunate to be leaders in some domains. But none of us is leader in every single domain, right? It's not possible. How do you reconcile yourself with that?
I'm totally okay with it. Totally comfortable in saying I suck in certain things. And
do you think that's also like from your mindfulness, that where you're able to, like, if you had to tell others, how do you teach yourself to be okay with not being a leader in everything?
I figure most of us, from what I understand, since I deal with a lot of youth every day, not the YLC kind of youth who are already, working or leading a unit, but more about students who want to be there. I understand there's a lot of competitiveness. All the same, I also feel that we all reckon and reconcile with the fact that we are not good at everything. So all the time when we describe ourselves in a materialistic way, we stand up and say, those are my hobbies and that's what my strengths are. And those are my weaknesses. And that's where we start a journey as back in college or school, right? I don't think anybody here is, I'm not perfect, and I haven't really found many people who are worried about not being perfect in everything. And I also feel that there are fads that are going on. There are trends that are going on in the world. Social media could be one of them right now, or AI could be the other one. And then everyone wants to excel at it without, taking that pause again, stepping back and understanding that you are good in some things, and you should perhaps apply the 80-20 principle there, where you say, I'm good in 20% of the things, and I'm going to put 80% of my focus and energy and efforts on this and excel in this and be the rock star here, rather than try to be a rock star in 80% of the things and keep putting 20% of the energy in so many things and not really get anywhere. That somehow doesn't make any sense to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, because you have to, yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I'm down for the next question. It's all right.
We've got a really nice question from Rupika Jain, which is, I think, kind of tying back to this idea of mindfulness and leadership really well. How do we differentiate between situations that need an immediate response and those that would benefit from a more mindful or reflective approach. Should we refrain from instant reactions? Often our instinct is to react immediately or swiftly, but this can be influenced by concerns. Or how do we address this internal dialogue and then respond? So when is it important to give an immediate response, and when is it important to reflect?
Okay, as a leader in your organization, whether you are an entrepreneur or even if you're holding a position, there will be situations when you will need to take instant decisions. And if you have started with the snoozes and slowly stayed with your breath and learned to stay in your body right here, right now, sort of person, I don't think it should be a problem. I would personally say the more spontaneous you are, the more living in the now you are, the easier and the better it is. Of course, there are situations which require reflection. And if they are not urgent, it's always good to just chew over them, sleep over them, talk to them about with a confidant if you need to, and then get back to it rather than being impulsive and running into it. But I believe all leaders would require to take a lot of decisions instantaneously, spontaneously. And that's a point of time when I would say, go with your heart. That's going to be reckless. A lot of people are going to say, no, go with your mind or brain. I always follow my heart. And I have tried experimenting with this as well several times. And my understanding or difference is that every time I've taken a decision with my mind or brain, my mind always talks with what is beneficial, what is good, what is advantageous, yada, yada, yada. And yes, for the organization, by and large, I understand that. But often, when I leave it to the heart, because there's really no heart, heart is just a muscle that's pumping the... So essentially what I'm saying is you leave it to your true self. Your intellect gets out of the way and go with your gut, as you call it. When you go with that, in the long run, in the hindsight, every time I look at that, it's always a good decision. I never have regrets about it, And I'm not trying to go against advantages and gains and profits here. I'm just saying it's got its own language. And I think you all listen to it, because you constantly, I hear people talking about, my heart feels like this, but my brain is saying this, or my mind is saying this. And that's exactly what I'm referring to, because you essentially are what you call your heart, the consciousness, the truth. And when you go with that, I think it's lovely, because then you never go wrong. You're always happy with that decision. There's no regret at the end.
I love that. So we have a couple more questions, and I'm mindful that we're coming up on time. So I'm going to give you these questions together. Some of them are sort of a little more, I would say not questions, but answers with question marks at the end. One important question from Mr. Gupta again is, how do I get this book? Where do I get this book? How much does this book cost? So where this book is available is one question. Then we have some more questions about how can mindfulness help you grow as a leader or help you get ahead in your career? And what values does this help you bring into the professional environment? So those, and then I'm going to read out what could be questions for you to respond to. When feelings of anxiety strike, if you pause, breathe, look at your surroundings, and name 3 things that you see, are these techniques that are good for controlling anxiety? That is, I'm assuming that's a yes or no question, and the answer is probably leaning towards a yes. And then we have one more that says, enlightenment is the realization of a basic truth that existence is a mental event. Well, it's very profound. When you observe the outside world, actually, you end up seeing only your own brain, and the sensation in the brain is interpreted as existence. Enlightenment is the realization that existence of any entity happens in the mind, and thus existence in itself is an illusion, and reality is always a mental concept. Enlightenment gives you remarkable courage and confidence to cope with the vagaries of life. In my opinion, enlightenment is achieved chiefly through self-introspection and logical, rational approach. Is this true?
Okay, I'm not sure how much we have time for, but let me start from first and go quickly to, the book is on Amazon. I think it's for 800 something. It's an expensive book. Never mind, rather talk to you if you can. Number two, if you are leaning towards breathing and anxiety or whatever it is, the minute everything you just said you would do is coming back to your body, is all you're doing. You're coming back in your body, you're staying in the present. That should ideally help, right? That's what we talked about. And then you said, what is required for leadership? That was the second question. So we did talk about a lot of that today. I mean, stepping back and breathing, staying in the present, being more mindful and aware when you're taking decisions, understanding the truth of yourself. And all that has helped me over the years. And I think if it's a beginning for a journey for you, maybe you want to put on some snoozes. Maybe you want to have a support group or a Sangat to help you keep coming back, because it's a tricky world, and we keep getting swayed with it all the time. I'm sorry, what else am I missing?
How can our last question, and I think we'll close with this, how can mindfulness help you grow as a leader? Oh, one more. Is this available on Amazon Audible?
I don't think so. I think it's basically a European, so you find it in US and Europe in all the Amazons and quite a few other platforms, but I think in India it's only available on Amazon. Your question is, how does it help you grow with mindfulness, is it? I think I would say the following. I was far less intelligent, beautiful, sensible, graceful, everything than I am now. And it is quite logical and simple if I was to talk about this. The minute you start, every morning you wake up and you take a shower, you clean your body, you clean your hair, you clean your house, you mop, you sweep, you vacuum, but you see, you never really clean your mind until you learn to meditate and empty it. That's the only time when you can switch off for at least a few minutes and let it completely clean up. And when you do that, trust me, literally over the weeks and months, you become more intelligent. I have no better way of saying this. You have solutions to problems that you could not see earlier, because your capacity to process information expands or increases, or whichever way you want to call it. And I've seen that practically, physically. I mean, I think I was much dumber earlier than after it. So yeah, it does help you grow in so many ways, I personally think. Of course, your relationships get better. And I'm sorry, we don't have a lot of time, but trust me, it applies to everything you're doing, your business decisions, your relationships, your personal, inside you, who you are, all that. It's definitely helpful. You grow as a better human being.
Fabulous. This has been a really insightful session, and I'd like to thank the audience as well for all the questions that they've come up with, and how we've managed to make this into a discussion more than as like structured, debate. Thank you so much, Harpreet ji, for your insights, for your time, for sharing your wisdom. There are a lot of appreciation messages in the comments as well. For those of you who are asking, again, this book is available on Amazon. It's called I Am. Both Harpreet ji and I are on LinkedIn, so if you would like to connect with either of us, I guess that would be a good way to do so. Thank you once again. Please, stay in touch with IMA YLC and attend the next events we have. Have a lovely evening, everybody, and thank you for logging in.
Thank you, Bindu. Take care.